What if I were to tell you that there was an algorithm that implemented hundreds of thousands of lines of code, all in order to maintain a massive database of pictures, comments, and videos, all for the enjoyments of its users? I'm sure we'd all pay quite a bit for this luxury. However, it already exists under the names of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Regardless of age or worldview, it's very difficult to find someone who doesn't implement some sort of social platform, unless you're homeschooled, that is. However, because of the all-welcoming nature of such a platform, it's commonplace to find all sorts of conversations being entertained by the platform's users. Whether it's a trivial debate on the most recent Marvel movie or a very serious discussion on politics, you're sure to find it somewhere on social media, all because of the algorithms set in place by the developers. Because of social media algorithms, these platforms constantly present and push forward extremist ideas, which in turn influence its users. This creates an environment devoid of middle ground for its users, with only hostility for anyone who disagrees with them. By allowing this hatred to arise, we ultimately lose any love or respect for anyone who even slightly disagrees with us. Social media utilizes the internet in order to share pictures, videos, thoughts, and comments with others without having to physically be with them. For example, Instagram is a platform designed to post pictures of yourself and your friends in an attempt to show off what you're doing, where you've been, or even just your outfit of the day. In addition, each social media platform has its own distinct personality that goes along with the app, which in turn develop their own unique cultures. This array of cultures found within social media is all thanks to the varying algorithms within these applications. Quote, at a lot of technology companies, there's three main goals. There's the engagement goal, to drive up your usage and keep you scrolling. There's the growth goal, to keep you coming back and to get you to invite friends and to get them to invite even more friends. And then there's the advertising goal, to make sure that as all that's happening, they're making as much money as humanly possible from advertising. Each of these goals are powered by algorithms whose job is to figure out what you like and to keep those numbers going up. The algorithm is the system or way that social media applications decide what people want to see, how they want to see it, and under what light. But it also aims to place you in an echo chamber for other like-minded individuals. These platforms create a vicious loop of information which constantly cycles through your feed. Quote, social media users are constantly bombarded with information and messages. Once individuals begin using social media applications, they find that it is difficult to cease, especially if they have a cell phone with texting capability or a smartphone with 24/7 internet access. End quote. Not only does the algorithm seek to rope you in with other like-minded individuals, but it also assaults you with a barrage of content in order to keep you using the app. This constant access can be detrimental to your outlook on life, especially considering that the content of these platforms can begin to change even how humans begin to act. In this presentation, I'll be explaining the benefits and drawbacks of social media, the impact it's made on the world of politics, the dangers of social media propaganda, the biblical outlook on this topic, and finally, what we must do to protect ourselves from falling victim to propaganda. Although there's a plethora of positive effects of social media, there's also a wide array of negative connotations as well. For one, the rate at which humans receive, process, and accept information has drastically declined over the past 2 decades. This quicker reception rate, however, also causes one to blindly agree with what they're reading. Lack of follow-up research leads the modern individual to fully accept this faulty information as fact. For example, quote, where people get their news determines whether they believe misinformation. Those who get their news from social media are more likely to believe in falsehoods, end quote. Belief of false information is severely escalated by the presence of social media platforms, placing a user in an echo chamber of like-minded thoughts and ideologies often causes the user to unknowingly lower their guard, making them completely unprepared for any falsehoods they could find themselves falling victim to. Many people find this upsetting, and social media influencers, especially doctors, frequently face this problem. Dr. Alison Escalante says, quote, my Facebook Messenger has been flooded with mothers asking me whether it's true that masks cause lung damage. This falsehood is all over social media, and moms are worried about their children. This isn't funny, end quote. Prevalence of misinformation creates a serious danger for the inexperienced users. Younger generation especially struggles with this issue, where falsehoods flourish among the facts of their feeds, often causing them to believe even the most blatant of lies. Social media has also manipulated the political sphere, creating an entirely new style of political persuasion. Before social media, people practiced politics very differently. Information traveled at a sluggish rate compared to the pace we see today, often taking several days for information to spread across the nation. This fact also allowed for politicians to fully tailor their public image, often enabling them to hide behind a newspaper or other third-party source. The all-encompassing and instantaneous nature of social media, however, has completely eliminated this privacy, and in its place, ushered in an atmosphere of transparency. Quote, social media has changed the game, allowing newcomers and incumbents alike to speak directly to constituents on everything from policy to what they had for dinner, end quote. This added layer of honesty not only exposes some rather unlikable political figures, but also implemented a far more social side of politics that we haven't seen before this point. In the past, politicians would make quick public appearances before returning to the comfort of their homes, whereas now it's commonplace for many politicians to stream themselves playing with many famous internet celebrities with video games or other third-party sources. These platforms also allow for a far more level playing field. Quote, political newcomers can get a substantial boost in support by using social media channels, which cost next to nothing and are easily tapped by anyone with internet access, end quote. With proper use, social media could save individuals hundreds of thousands of dollars when it comes to advertising a political campaign. However, there's also a very substantial monetary side to this type of platform. Quote, within the first month using Twitter, politicians were able to raise between 1% and 3% of what they would have raised within a 2-year traditional campaign. But that gain flowed almost exclusively to newcomers and not incumbents, end quote. This tiny fortune is the type of increase that political campaigns consider crucial. In fact, it's gotten to the place in our society where social media actually dictates our political sphere. One of social media's main influences is over politics, with some users even saying, quote, for people who are on social media, it is virtually impossible to avoid reminders and encouragement not to vote, end quote. Clearly, many of these social media platforms aim to encourage and push its users to vote, often trying to promote one candidate over another. From personal experience, I can say that such social media platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok all constantly reminded its users to vote in the upcoming 2020 election. This tactic has been so effective, in fact, that we've actually witnessed a major spike in new voters. Quote, many states have recorded record-breaking new voter registration numbers, and nationwide early voting has broken historic records at 99.7 early votes submitted, already more than 2/3 of the total votes cast in 2016, end quote. Clearly, this constant barrage of reminders and notifications successfully influences users to make the decision to exercise their rights. But what if this were to have power to be used in a negative way? Political propaganda and manipulation plays a major role in political opinion, seeking to exploit these benefits from social media to push forward its own agenda, an agenda designed to stir up emotion in its reader. As we've seen from propaganda throughout history, it is usually used to create an obligation in the reader to do as the poster says. This is a very crafty and manipulative tactic used not to encourage people, but rather to take advantage of them. This tactic, known as, quote, disinformationasia, or the art of disinformation, is a form of manipulated or completely fabricated news, a tactic used to manipulate people and spread bogus propaganda, end quote. Not only has this tactic been implemented throughout the World War I and World War II eras, but is also being used in an entirely new way within the modern age. Often in the form of social media posts, this methodology seeks to captivate and entice young users, causing younger generations to drown in a tidal wave of false information. These persuasive powers don't just end with logic, however. Quote, agitprop, or agitation propaganda, is another Russian tactic used to stir up emotional topics. In olden times, agitprop was executed using poetry, plays, large-scale posters, and wall art. In the internet age, designers create agitprop as memes and other artwork that can be forwarded via instant messaging or social media, end quote. Sadly, these same tactics are being used to manipulate the social media users of the world, forcing them to become radicalized. Not only does this hurt themselves, but when they are executed on a large scale, creates a radicalized generation which lacks the ability to see any middle ground shared between them and their opposition. In a study, Daniela Hernandez found that, quote, between 2005 and 2016, social media played a role in radicalizing 50% of individuals in extremist groups. This high percentage is rather frightening, and with the increasing relevance of social media, this number is doomed only to grow. Not only does it demonstrate that this tactic can work, but it's showing just how easy it is to manipulate someone to radicalization through a simple social media post. Many say that this idea of social media radicalization is simply speculation. However, quote, in 2016, social media, including services like Facebook, WhatsApp, Skype, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as personal blogs and forums, played a major role in radicalizing and mobilizing nearly 90% of lone actors, according to a 2018 study by the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Response to Terrorism. This propaganda doesn't only manipulate people, but is used to plant seeds of doubt and distrust within the mind of the observer. This subtle sort of manipulation is seen rather regularly, usually around the time of a major political event. Quote, "In the past few weeks leading up to Election Day, there has been a unique case in the rise of video manipulation where video clips are edited to make candidates appear to be making missteps they didn't commit, slurring words, or appearing less confident. And some deepfakes, a technique using artificial intelligence to fabricate images and videos most often used for malicious purposes, where videos are computer-generated to show false footage, end quote. This truly devastating thing isn't the fact that some people would create a deepfake, but rather at the rate at which they blindly agree to this misinformation, often because it aligns with their beliefs. By feeding social media users content that dehumanizes people who disagree with them, this form of political propaganda not only affects the observer, but emotionally, but also causes them to develop a real Napoleon complex. While some may argue that internet propaganda plays little to no role in persuading the public, they are only failing to fall victim to propaganda as well. Those who make this claim only look at poorly implemented examples of online propaganda. However, they completely disregard and sometimes subscribe to the more convincing propaganda pieces. One argument they'll attempt to make is that social media algorithms don't place people in an echo chamber, but rather give them a mixed bag of news. I can explain myself why this isn't true. However, I'd rather you hear what Damaso Tinoco, a UK graduate with a bachelor's degree in marketing, has to say about this topic. Quote, "Social media is one big game of confirmation bias. This isn't an accident. People don't follow or friend profiles that don't share the same beliefs as them," end quote. By implementing this idea of confirmation bias, Damaso hits on a major point in our argument. Everyone is biased. Realizing this fact only makes understanding propaganda even more detrimental. Journalist J. David Bolter also confirms this fact. Quote, "Propaganda is nothing new. It's appeared in pamphlets, books, and newspapers practically since the invention of the printing press. But social media seems particularly susceptible to spreading disinformation," end quote. A good way to help identify social media manipulation comes from the British Parliament, which identifies and separates propaganda with 6 distinct categories. One, content that is completely false or fabricated. 2, content that is manipulated by distorting information or imagery. 3, content that is an impersonation of genuine sources. 4, content that is misleading. 5, content that has a false context of connection, use of headlines that have no relation to reality or story facts. And 6, content that is baked with satire and parody. Despite all of these categories having separate distinctions, there is one theme found within all 6 of these characteristics: deception. Every qualification for propaganda found on this list deals with some sort of mockery or misdirection, which is exactly why so many people believe it to be a trivial issue. By seeing the blatant examples of propaganda, these individuals believe that they are immune to its deception. However, this only allows them to become even more susceptible to a well-crafted propaganda post. The question then becomes, what do we do about this? Despite the natural inclination to just avoid social media altogether, we can't do that. Social media has become such an integral part of our culture to the point where many jobs and occupations depend upon these platforms. Instead, I believe that the true solution to this issue lies in exposure to propaganda. By allowing people to become familiar with the platform, we can give them this experience. And when mixed with proper education about propaganda and how to identify propaganda, this process will not only allow individuals to experience the fun and whimsical side of social media, but also shield them from falling for fictitious narratives. While many Christians find this topic difficult to discuss, especially in the realm of biblical backing, the Bible offers a very simple solution to this issue. Although social media's divisive propaganda pieces aim to stir up an immediate sense of passion and aggression, the Bible actually directs us in the opposite direction. Emphasizing peace, the Bible says, quote, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." James 1:19. This call to be slow to anger will also give us time to analyze and assess what we're truly seeing and look at the logical argument presented. With modern propaganda, there's little to no logic to be found. These posters, however, will contain many aggressive words and phrases. Quote, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Proverbs 15:1, and, quote, "A hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention." Proverbs 15:18. These verses help us realize the malicious post's true intentions. By instead resisting the urge to spread these posts, we not only save ourselves, but save other people as well. One surefire way to deconstruct a propaganda piece is by comparing it to the fruits of the Spirit. Quote, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Against such thing there is no law." End quote. Galatians 5:22 through 23. When stacked up against this filter, it is near impossible for any deceptive piece to squeeze its way through. Finally, the Bible also talks about how we are to treat those who disagree with us. Although social media says to ignore and fight anyone who disagrees with your opinion, the Bible maintains an entirely different approach. God calls us not to hate one another, but to remain understanding. Quote, "Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense." Proverbs 19:11. These verses demonstrate the overwhelming mercy and love of God, as well as the mercy we are to give other people, which ultimately demonstrates just how truly twisted and malicious these propaganda posts are. Social media creates countless positive situations. However, the dark underbelly of these platforms can catch many of us by surprise. Due to the inner workings of many social media algorithms, extremist ideas are constantly presented and pushed forward to affect their users. This creates an aggressive environment in which middle ground becomes almost entirely obsolete, with only hostility for any of its users. By allowing individuals to experience social media while educating on the characteristics of propaganda, we equip them with the ability to distinguish fact from fiction, freeing them from the grasp of social seduction.